Testing, testing, testing. Okay. Okay. Right. So let's get this started. Right. So people are aware what we're aims for today. We are going to go through what we have done so far, and then we are going to hopefully make some progress on subclasses. Well, first things first, I'm going to update you on what we have done, and then we're going to discuss what the next steps are. So, we have Battle Channel. This is our version of the Barbarian. Nice, simple, easy. Laid out like all classes, so we have some initial questions we ask, some things to get the ideas flowing. So we have what led to channeling your emotion, taught you the art. Do you have any channeling aids? Have you picked up any superstitions? Let's say it like that. So, Battle Channeler. It's a D12 hit die. Get light, medium armor shields, simple martial weapons, no tools, and you get 3 skills between animal handling, athletics, diplomacy, empathy, intimidation, magical law, nature, perception, stamina, and survival. You get, for taking the class, 2 martial weapons, or a martial weapon, 2 simple weapons. You get the class tags Battle, Channel, and Martial, which means you'll have access to any feat that has the martial requirement. When you have a Mark of Fate, you can choose to increase the duration of your channel, make it that it won't end early for this increased duration, and that you can quieten the motion automatically, which we'll get onto in a minute. And then you have Emotional Strike, which is as an inspired action. You can use the inspired action to make a number of weapon attacks equal to 1/3 of your skill bonus. So it's going to be half for the first half, 1 attack, second half, 2 attacks. These attacks crit on a 19, 18, 19, or 20. Hello. Multiclassing, you need 2 in physique. Then Channel Emotions is you get to pick 1 of 10 emotions. 5 emotions are tied to the dream: joy, hope, peace, courage, love. And 5 are tied to nightmare, grief, despair, rage, fear, and envy. If you pick the dream emotions, you get the dream channeler tag. If you get the nightmare emotions, you get the nightmare channeler tag. And for 1 AP, you can channel emotion. And for the duration of this effect, you get to have advantage on trait tests to do with your chosen emotion, except for attack rolls, which will come up in a moment, why that is. When you make a melee attack that uses physique, you get to add your skill bonus to the damage. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. You can cast spells and psionic powers, but you cannot concentrate on them while channeling. And your mood, your roleplay effect, you effectively, while channeling, have to roleplay being under this emotion. And you can attempt to quieten it so you don't have this roleplay requirement. But if you fail it, you are entirely taken over by the emotion. Can't do it if you're in heavy armor. It lasts for an encounter. It can end early if you're not unconscious. You choose to end it for an AP. You haven't attacked a creature since at the if your turn ends, you haven't attacked someone, or you haven't taken damage since your last turn, or you haven't made a trait test using a trait tied to your chosen emotion since your last turn. Once you have used channel emotion, you get so many times, much like rage. And so you have courage, which runs off physique, and its associated damage type is fire. So every emotion has a trait, damage, and an effect. So if you channel courage as well as the previous things, you get, while a target is marked by you, if they hit with an attack roll against someone else and they are within your reach, you can use your reaction to make an attack against that. To make the attack hit you instead. Despair is determination, necrotic damage. If an individual is marked, they have disadvantage on determination tests. Envy is intuition and poison damage. They have the marked target has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you. If the target does hit someone other than you, deals damage to someone other than you, you can use your reaction to make a single attack against that target. Fear is knowledge cold. While marked, they have disadvantage to not be frightened, and if you crit hit them, they have to make a determination check or become frightened. Grief is endurance necrotic. While an individual's been marked, they have disadvantage on trait tests to resist the dictation spell, school of spells, or psionic powers. Hope is determination radiant. While they're marked, you have a +1 bonus to determination checks against them. And if you score a critical hit against the marked target, a number of allies equal to your skill bonus who can see the strike can repeat any trait test to end a condition applied to them early. Joy is agility fire. While an individual is marked, you reduce the AP of actions that target only the marked individual by 1 to a minimum of 1 AP. So the attack action against the marked target would only be 1 AP instead of 2. Love is intuition force. While an individual is under the effect of the marked condition, you have advantage on empathy skill rolls against them. If you score a critical hit, they have to make a determination check. Otherwise, if they fail, you pick an ally within your reach and they recover HP equal to half the damage dealt. A lot of this references your reach, which for most people is 1 meter. But if you're playing a large or larger target, or have certain ancestry features or other things in effect, you might have a reach of 2 meters. Peace is endurance radiant. While the individual is under the effects of your condition, you have advantage on diplomacy and empathy checks against them. If the target deals damage to individuals other than you, you can use a reaction to do an unarmed strike against them. Rage is physique and fire. While the target is marked, you can give yourself disadvantage on your attack rolls against the target as long as the attack roll was made at disadvantage, so you can't use advantage to counteract it. You can double the skill bonus modifier for the damage applied with the channel emotion. Then you have specialized defense, which is you pick either armor defense, where you can now channel in heavy armor and you're trained in heavy armor, but you can no longer channel using a shield or light armor. And then you have unarmored defense, which is what it currently is, which is you have a different hit target calculation if you're not wearing armor, and you can use a shield. Fighting style, you get either the emotion fighter, great weapon fighter, reactive fighter, thrown a weapon fighter, two weapon fighter, or unarmed fighter feat. If you picked unarmored defense, you get duelist as well. If you get armored, you get a defensive fighter. Fighting styles now feat, so when you gain a feat, you can gain an extra fighting style. Reactive fighter is very important because it's one of the only ways you can get attacks of opportunity in the game. Fighters will automatically be able to do attacks of opportunity. That's one of the special things about being a fighter, is you always have attacks of opportunity. Everyone else has to train into it. Emotional fighter is a fighting style feat only battle channelers get, and unarmed fighter is important because it is a fighting style feat that is its effect is dependent on what class you're taking it as. Skilled Wanderer is at second level. You get another choice. You get to pick between one of four options. You can channel spirits, which allows you to see spirits on the ethereal plane and be better at calling knowledge, communicating with them. Channeler of the Order gives you more skills from your initial choice and lets you be part of an organization that you and the game guide create together. Experienced Dungeoneer is basically danger sense, and you get the technology skill, so you know how traps work. And Experienced Traveller is you can do a marching pace for twice the amount of time, and you have advantage to survival checks for tracking, navigation, and foraging. It's probably the most boring, but also incredibly useful if you're playing that specific kind of game. Your channeler path is your subclass. As we saw with Arcanist, it is your level, the first level you get your subclass, it's pick a path. Then the later ones will all be you can increase the tier of your subclass by 1 or pick a new subclass to be level 1 in. Level 4 is a feat. As before, all feats, whenever you get a feat and to increase a character trait by 1. There are no half feats because you're not based on a number 0 to 20 for your character trait. There's no need for a +2 and a +1 or 2 +1s in skills, because effectively if I gave you a +2, that would be the same as giving in D&D a character a +4 to a trait, because you're only modifying the modifier, not the number it's attached to. Extra attack is level 5, so you can attack twice with the attack action. Adept Channeler at 5th level is when channeling emotions, you get the following effects. So you get to replace physique with your associated trait. So if you are a fear battle channeler, your attack rolls and damage rolls, instead of going plus physique, it now goes plus knowledge if your knowledge is better. And that also applies to the bit of the channel emotion trait that went, if you're attacking with physique with a weapon, you get to add your skill bonus. If you attack with your chosen trait, you get to add your skill bonus. You get resistance to the damage type of your emotion, so if it's fear, it's cold. If it's despair, you get resistance to necrotic, etc., etc. You gain an additional benefit based on your emotion. These all refer to the desperation condition, which is when you're below a quarter of your hit points, you get the desperation condition, which then means you get these effects. A common theme you will see is the nightmare tends to interact one way, and the dream emotions tend to interact another. So in this case, if I recall, so that's why with the initial channel emotions, the thing was, if you marked someone, the nightmare tended to be you give that person disadvantage. whereas the dream tended to be you get advantage when interacting with that target. For this one, I believe, let me see if I remember it, I think it was largely the negative emotions were very much a, if you're in this reach, here is a negative effect. Courage was more about buffing the team or yourself. So courage is when you're below 25 hit points at the start of each your turn, you get temporary hit points equal to your skill bonus. While you have temporary hit points, your attack rolls score critical hits on a 19 or a 20. Despair is if you're below 25 hit points, all targets in your reach have to make a determination test. If they fail, they reduce their AP by 1 to the start of your next turn. If they pass the test, they're immune for the rest of the encounter or scene. But you can already see here it's kind of the negative emotions are, if you're within my reach, here is an aura. Whereas the positive is more, here are not necessarily auras, they're just more self-buffs. Envy's opponents in your reach have -2 penalty to attack rolls, targeting individuals other than you, which means if you've marked someone and you're in this below 25 your hit points, the person basically is disadvantaged and a -2 to their attack rolls against people other than you. Against you, however, well, you want their attention, you're envious. Fear is all opponents in your reach with any degree of the frightened condition have their movement speed reduced to 0. Grief is at the start of each of your turns, everyone in your reach has to make an endurance test. If they fail, they fall prone and become incapacitated and basically start crying until the start of your next turn. Again, once they've passed it, they're immune to the start of the next encounter or scene. Hope is you have resistance to all damage, and if you score a critical hit, a number of allies equal to your skill bonus gain temporary hit points. Joy is, so hope is very hard to kill. Admittedly, it's less useful than you think because there's quite a lot of resistances that you can get if you build the character right. So at that point it's like, well, I've got resistance to everything. That just means it's going to take me a little bit longer to die when I'm below 25 hit points. I'm still got a good chance of dying though if something's doing a lot of damage. Joy is if you're below 25% hit points, you have +1 AP, +1 RP, so you get 2 reactions a turn. And you could have the equivalent of 2 D&D actions in a turn, but you can never use the same action twice. So you can attack and then choose to do something else. Love is at the start of each of your turns, and all allied individuals within your reach get temporary hit points equal to your skill bonus. So that's actually, love is one of the few ones where we kind of break that rule, but that was mainly because love has its own theme of helping your allies. Peace is below 25% your hit points. If an individual will make an attack against you, they have to make a determination check. On a failed test, they deliberately miss the strike as their conscience gets the better of them. And then rage is you have an aura that basically everybody within your reach has advantage on attack rolls they make. But anytime they would attack with advantage while within your area effect until the start of their next turn, attacks against them are made at advantage. So then you get your first subclass bonus, which as we said is +1 to a tier, or a new tier, or a new path, sorry. You also get an additional fighting style. The second expanded channeler path, which is about level 11ish if I recall, that one gives you an additional one of the Wanderer's abilities, so where you had the 4 choices there. So if you picked being a member of the Order, being part of an organization, and gaining skills, now you could pick to be talking to spirits, or you could be picking to be a navigator. So 7th level is you have it, and then the final, I should say, Channeler's Path is again another fighting style. One of the things with this class was for the first 5 levels, you get quite a lot of abilities. After the first 5 levels, it's very much a once per tier. Usually, when we call upon your emotions, you will get 2 features for 1 level, and then every other level you get 1 feature, and then you get 2 levels for the next tier. And the only exception is the final tier, but because it makes sense to not have as many abilities level 15 plus, because that's when all the abilities get more powerful. Lightning reflexes is you have advantage on initiative rolls, and your walking speed increases by 2 if you're not wearing heavy armor, unless you pick the thing that gave you heavy armor, at which point you ignore the restriction. If you are surprised at the beginning of combat and aren't incapacitated, you can ignore the condition if you immediately at the start of your turn take the channel emotions action. 8th is a feat. 9th is a slight alteration to brutal critical. It's basically when determining extra damage for a critical hit, you can roll a number of additional weapon damage dice equal to half your skill bonus. In addition, while under the effects of channel emotion, you can replace the weapon damage of your melee weapons with the damage type of your emotion. And you get to summon Emotion Friend. They have a few hit points. They have a reasonable hit target, and basically they can take your battle channel actions that you have access to. Channeler's Path is at 10th, and that's why I said you get the extra skilled Wanderer. Vessel of Emotion at 11th. This is based on the Barbarian ability where if you would be reduced to 0, you can make a test, and if you pass it, you go to 1 HP instead. But every time you have to retake it, the difficulty increases by 5. The other thing is you're harder to kill. You have to take 2 more degrees the wounded condition before dying. And importantly, these extra degrees go at the start, which means you have a 2 wound delay before the negative effects start to kick in. Then you get a feat, then you get defensive channel, which again, this one was designed was the positive emotions are just while the barrier is active, get an effect. The nightmare emotions are when this barrier breaks until the end of your next turn, X happens. So the barrier is for 2 action points, so it's a full action. You manifest a barrier that has a number of hit points equal to a quarter of your maximum hit points. So again, it's just an extra little shield just to keep you going a little bit longer. The more hit points you have, the bigger some of these effects will be. This barrier. You can also apply it to someone you can see within 6 meters of you. So the barrier has an ability based off what happens. While the barrier is active for courage, individual who actively moves out of your reach takes 1d12 fire damage. If they take 7 or more fire damage, their speed is reduced to 0 until the start of the next turn. Despair is until the turn after the barrier breaks. Actions that target you require an additional AP to perform. Envy is when the barrier breaks, everyone must make an endurance test or they take 1d12 poison damage and a degree of the poison condition. Fear is when it breaks, they've got to make a determination check. If they fail, they gain the frightened condition. Grief is when it breaks, you regain 1 use of your channel emotion feature. If it broke due to receiving damage, you regain your summon emotion feature, 1 use of your summon emotion feature. Because that's the other thing, the barrier lasts for 3 turns. Or until it loses all its HP. Hope is while the barrier is active, allies within your reach have inspired events occur on the d20 roll of a 19 or a 20. Joy is while the barrier is active, you have advantage on all trait tests to resist the charmed and frightened condition. Love is, while active, you can break the barrier early to heal allies within your reach and harm enemies with force damage for the same amount. Peace is, while the barrier is active, allies within your reach have advantage on trait tests to resist the effects of spells and psionic powers, and Rage is when it breaks, you get a turn where you score crits on a 19 or a 20. 13th level, yeah, it's the double up because it's an emotion thing. The other thing is you gain the benefits of your adept channeler while under the bloody condition. So instead of 25% hit points, it's 50% hit points. And while under the effects of channel emotion, you can attack 3 times instead of twice whenever you take the attack action. So while raging, your extra attack is actually 3. 14th level, extra thing, and fighting style. 15th level, you only end your channel early if you fall unconscious or choose to end it. 16th is a feat. 17th is you basically turn your critical hit into an area of effect. Warped body is you get the original Barbarian stat increase and you get an extra fighting style. You pick 2 of the free emotion, 2 of the free traits tied to your thing: physique, endurance, or another trait. If your emotion has a third trait, if it has one of the other 2, you can't pick the same trait twice. Both traits increase by 2 to a maximum of 7. All 3 now have a maximum value of 7 instead of 5. Then you get a feat. Then you get Dream Champion, which lets you get the Dream Touch template and an extra template feature. If you already have the template, you get 2 template features from that template. If you picked a dream emotion, whenever you channel emotion, you radiate light that you can control. You're immune to radiant damage, and your melee weapon attacks make opponents make endurance tests, which if they fail, they take radiant damage and become blinded. And you can use an action to heal people around you. Nightmare, your form becomes more monstrous, so your action is the frightening visage ability that basically dragons and the like get. I think it's a bit weaker than what dragons get, but it gives the same essence. And you're immune to necrotic damage, and with your melee weapons, you make the opponent make an endurance test, which if they fail, they take an extra 2d6 necrotic damage, and you recover HP equal to the necrotic damage dealt. And then you get the normal thing for finishing your class, which is some abilities go up and you become legendary. This bit is just common to every class. Right. So now I've kind of caught you up to that. Now we can discuss what we're doing next. So obviously we have subclasses. Battle Channeler needs subclasses. There are 3 we want to write. Path of the Dreamer, which is for those who took one of the dream emotions. Path of the Nightmare for someone who took one of the nightmare emotions, and Path of Duality, where you get to double up. You get to have 1 dream and 1 nightmare emotion. Obviously, people may find that interesting, people may not find that interesting. That is the first part. The second part is, as I'm slowly going through the classes, I helped some people who wanted to have an early look at this. Taught them through the process. Oh, pardon me. Taught them through the process of trying to make a character, which is fine. Generally, the actual making of the character went fine. The main problem was it it was coming into apparent that because we haven't written the equipment section yet, that's something we're going to have to consider. And of course, the closer we get to inventor, the closer we're going to reach the fact that we can't write the inventor unless we come up with a crafting system. Because the entire point of inventor is you're good at the crafting system. Or at least you can choose to be good at the crafting system. So, and the more we're doing the crafting system, also need to consider magic items. So, what I'm probably going to be doing is bits of jumping between. So, one time I might be doing the battle channeler subclass because an idea's hit me, so I want to just work through it. Other points I might jump to the next class, which is Bard, because coming up with a subclass is very different to coming up with a core class. Because it's like Battle Channel, I had a really key class identity that I wanted to hone in on, which is you are the emotion warrior. You channel emotions. As I said, it kind of was like half inspired by Barbarian, half inspired by Dark Knight. And that's why a lot of the abilities kind of flip between being very tanky. Like, if you want to be a good tank, damn, envy, potentially courage or peace would be really useful. But whereas others are a bit more themed around, other emotions are themed around, okay, I want to be the damage dealer. So what I want to do is have some subclasses ready, but these are harder because kind of I had the idea for the class, but I don't have kind of I don't want to phrase it. The concept isn't as strong in what is a dream, nightmare, or duality channeler. What is their thing? So while I work that out, obviously I won't be necessarily working as hard on them. I can either jump to the next class, Bard, which is going to be interesting. Because I'm not quite sure what I want to do with Bard. Nor do I even have an idea what I want to do for its subclasses. And then the other thing is we can also jump to equipment, which will be very boring. Largely because equipment is going to involve me personally going through a lot of homebrew that I've done over the years, going, right, what weapons do I wish were in the game that aren't in the game? How can I make the weapons that are in the game more interesting? How can I make the armor system more interesting? Etc., etc., etc. Like, this is actually incredibly important because it's incredibly important as my kind of the D23 thing we're doing is heavily themed around items, so I need to actually, sooner rather than later, come up with the item system. And this is where we are hitting a bit of a crossroads. I need to do lots of things simultaneously, because at the same time, there's no point me balancing anything if the end result is okay. Like, I can make all these amazing items, but then I also need to know what the classes can do, so I know roughly what level should different creatures be able to do. So yeah, all a lot of fun. All a lot of fun. Oh God. And I've technically magnified my complexity because on the one hand, the subclass that I've done will be very cool, I think, because you know there are times you sit there and you go, I don't want to take a subclass to its penultimate form. Like, I would love it, for example, if I could, as a warlock, progress through warlock, kind of get early hexblade, kind of mix hexblade and something like Fey, or stuff like that, but not have to deal with the accursed spectre feature, because I always sit there and go, oh, spectre. I don't want to have to deal with the pet stuff. But of course that then means, oh God, complexity magnifies quite heavily, quite heavily. So yeah, I've got to work out how quite that all works. All in all, great fun. Um, so yeah, that's where we are. In simple order, it's I need to make 3 subclasses for Battle Chandler and the Bard class, and the equipment. But what we'll do is we will spend a little bit. We've only been at this for about 40 minutes. What we'll do is chat about the subclasses, how I currently think they could work, and we'll see if talking through it potentially helps with the problem. So let's have a thinky sound. Let's have a thinkle, shall we? A thinkle dinkle. So Path of the Dreamer. How do I feel Path of the Dreamer should work? How I've currently been thinking about it. At the moment, in the momento, is I think, therefore I am, my current thought process is I think what I want to do is kind of play with the essence of you being able to, in your sleep, travel more freely to the realm of dreams. Uh, So we kind of want a transport element. Then they should have some combat effects. The one thing that comes to mind is this idea of support. It should be kind of you're playing the tank, so you're playing uh, so you're going to be frontline. Like, I'm not saying battle channels would ever be at the back. Most of its features are like melee weapons, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like you. I wonder if maybe I should. Maybe I should not just consider looking at FF14's Dark Knight. I should also consider the Warrior. So what I could potentially look at doing is Dreams is maybe about navigating and traveling to the realm of dreams, but also about the problem is Warrior's a very selfish tank in FF14. The entire thing is I heal myself. It's a lot of self heal. Maybe. Not quite sure. But that could come in useful for Nightmare. Nightmare, you're more about being monstrous. So it could have a bit more self-heal. I think Nightmare might be the subclass you pick if you really want to focus on combat. Because the other thing you also have to take into account is 5 emotions are already having a bunch of effects. You don't want to go too much in any one direction. Maybe because there was the one bit I wanted to do. Think about Dream Champion is the reason there's the final fighting Star Wars. I was hoping that being close to Dream Champion, you look at it and maybe go, oh, I want the unarmed strike. But what if I made it that you get natural weapons while channeling Nightmare to begin with, and then give it a thing for allowing it to upgrade? Maybe you can increase the size of your unarmed strike die. It starts as a D6, and then basically you say, oh yeah, it could be increased. Basically just go, yeah, just increase the die size by 1. That could maybe work. Yeah, that could work. And then Path of Duality, my current thought process is kind of you can go light shadow, balance. If you go light or shadow, like your weapon becomes radiant necrotic. And if you, and then at later levels, maybe let you kind of make an echo of your weapon, which is in the opposite state to what you are. Not quite sure. So what's the rest of your effects? So then we have Bard, which is the other one I've got to deal with. So Bard, let's have a look. Where's the SRD document? Bard. So the difficulty with Bard is problem number one, Bard. We don't want it to be just music. A Bard should be able to a Bard should be able to just perform in some artistic manner. So spellcasting is spellcasting is going to be a problem because I need to make a wording that basically you get to pick between knowledge, intuition, determination to be your spellcasting stat, which then affects everything else. I need to come up with a way to make it right. No, it's easy. I ask 5 questions at the start of every character generation. Question number 1 for the bard: where does your magic come from? Does it come from your knowledge? Does it come from your experience? Or does it come from your determination? Then you ask the second question: what is your artistic medium? Are you a musician? Are you a painter? Are you a speaker? Are you a bit of multiple? Then you give them musical instruments or artisan tools, and you basically say your musical instruments or artisan tools are your focus. And we come up with some interesting tools and musical instruments to give a wide range of effects. So if you want to be the dancer, perhaps we give you bells or something like that that produces music as you dance. If you're a painter, we let you use painter's tools. And what it basically means is I will just have to make sure the equipment section has sufficient tools. It has tools for the creating of items, but it is also it has tools for crafters, but it also has tools for artists. And then you can choose for your subclass to really hone in on your specific kind of artistic medium, but it doesn't have to be. Because you could be a College of Law bard, and you could be a musician, you could play songs of renown, you could be an artist and make paintings of famous people, etc., etc., etc. Or you could pick something like, I'm taking the College of Dance or the College of Swords, which are very specific on what kind of art you're taking. And that would work. Bardic inspiration. Now, bardic inspiration is difficult. Because to be fair, I personally like how bardic inspiration currently works. But I am also aware it has problems. Primarily, it has problems in that you can forget the dies there. At which point you have to ask yourself the question, how do you resolve that? Because we could make it a reaction. But that would mean we want to be sure you always have a reaction ready, because you might want to react to something else. Do we give bards an extra point of reaction? We've been very reluctant to do it so far. Conceivably do it. We could give the bard an extra point of reaction. It's the thing, you make a small choice and then you have to make a decision. What the consequence of that choice? Does it have impacts we don't want to go down? Then there's Jack of all trades, which is fine. Jack of all trades is fine. Song of Rest. Dear God. Okay, so here's where the problem comes. Here's where the problem comes. The problem comes that Song of Rest is kind of crap. But how do you get around it? You can go down the 1D path where Song of Rest just becomes you have access to healing magic. You don't need to prepare them. You just have. But is that how we want to proceed? Bard? That it just has healing spells. It's an okay response. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't make anything different. It's just, yeah, you have healing spells. I hope you have the spell slots. What can we do with Bard? Hmm. I'm not sure how we deal with Bard. It's difficult. I'd be tempted to move Jack of all trades to slightly higher level. The big thing we have been very strict on is always giving you a choice, always having something where a choice occurs. Do you want to be a heavy armored defensive warrior who doesn't use shield and only trust their armor? Do you want to be someone who wears no armor at all? Or do you want to be a spellcaster who uses a staff or a spellbook or a wand or an orb? Giving something like that to Bard. Choice. Spellcasting is short, simple, and sweet. you get a choice. Which way do you want to cast your spells? Perhaps. I'm not quite sure. Bard is a pretty solid class, and this is the problem, it's pretty solid, but it's not perfect. The problem is, it's trying to keep it interesting. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Talking through it has given me some ideas, but... Right, I think we're going to be hitting a point where I'm just going to be bashing my head against a brick wall. So, we're going to take a very short 5-minute break. I think we've done some good. We've got my head going. I think I'm starting to get an idea what to do for the 3 subclasses. Bard is difficult. Bard is very difficult. I'm not quite sure I'm going to overcome it. If we can overcome it, or... I don't know. I think part of the problem is trying to work out for Bard. How? Where is your choice? Where is your options? Where is the personalization? I like personalization. Best thing about Warlock, super personalization. To a fair degree, also Artificer gets a good amount of personalization. I've kind of tried to give it, and I think I've somewhat managed with Arcanist. Battle Channeler. I think Arcanist slightly got it better. I could be wrong though. We've got a play test. We've got to see how these things, you know. Bard is just going to be difficult. Bard is just going to be difficult. Oh, well, anyway, if I keep musing, we're never going to get anywhere in life. Break screen. Right. We'll do some FF14 in a bit. So, back in a few minutes.